Hi, Ron.
Hi, Amir. I'm a very big fan, so this is a great it's a great pleasure to be talking to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So I'll start with like Forrest Gump is a very it's an iconic movie, and it's like the idea of remaking Forrest Gump is like remaking Lagan or Dilwale
Hmm.
Dulhania Le Jayenge. So like because you're not just retelling the story, you're also like bringing back that feeling. So like, what was it that about this story that most interested you, or was it the character more so?
Well, the way it happened was quite by accident. I had never planned to make Forrest Gump. It was one of my favorite films, but the thought of, remaking it or adapting it and making it in India had never occurred to me. And Atul, my friend, who's also has acted with me in a number of films, he and I were chatting one night and we were discussing films, and he asked me, "What is your favorite film?" And I said, one of them is Forrest Gump, and we spoke a little bit about the film. And the night ended, and I forgot about it. And um, 2 weeks later, Atul calls me up and says that I have a script for you. And I said, "Oh, what is it?" He said, "It's an Indian adaptation of Forrest Gump." And I said, "Oh," and I was like taken by surprise. And uh, I was a little taken aback because one, Atul has never written before. He's never written a script before, and two, because Forrest Gump is not a film you mess with. It's a cult classic, and you don't want to, you know, it's a little difficult to also imagine because it's so rooted in American culture. It's so difficult to imagine it in any other culture for that matter. So I was like, okay, and then the third thing was that he just took 2 weeks to do it, and I was like, I don't know what is going to sound like. So I was not very keen to hear it, and I was didn't have much hopes. But he said you must hear it, and I was also wanting to hear it, but I was busy, and I didn't really have much expectations of this, so I wasn't taking it seriously. And one day he called me and said, "Do you realize it's been 2 years since I've been following up with you, and you haven't heard the script?" And I said, "I'm so sorry." He said, "Well, I now by now realized you're not going to do it, but just hear it. I've spent some 2 weeks writing it." So I laughed and I said, "Okay, I'm going to hear it today." And I was in my house in the mountains in Panchgani, and I said, "Where are you?" He was in Pune, which is about 2 hours away. And I said, can you come down now and let's hear it today?" And he said, "Okay, I'm driving down." So he came down and he narrated the script to me. And that's when, I just fell in love with it when I heard the script. That's when I realized that, I mean, I just fell in love with it, and it drew me to it. I realized that this is what I need to do. And it's something that I just fell in love with. I what I couldn't imagine is how he had, managed to uh, adapt it so beautifully and so seamlessly. It felt as if it's an Indian film. And I kind of fell in love with it, and I decided I want to do it. And then, of course, it took us 8 years to get the rights.
Yeah.
But to answer your question, what really attracted me towards what made me watch, so it wasn't my idea to remake it. It kind of happened, and it happened by accident, and I just had to do it once I heard the script.
Yeah, no, it came out wonderfully. I really loved it.
Mm.
And then so like Laal Singh has a very he's like very likable. He has a very like this eternal youthfulness, and you're very good at playing those kind of parts. Like you've done it with Rancho and Three Idiots, which is like one of
Mm.
the greatest movies ever made. And then in PK, of course. And so like,
Mm.
and you just disappear into this role. So like, was Laal Singh one of your most challenging roles?
It was. It was because you know, as you know, the character is goes through various ages, and at one point he's 18 when he goes to college, and 20 and 21, and uh, I'm 57 now, but when we started prep on the film, I was whatever 53 or something, and I was like, that's going to be my biggest challenge, to bring that really simple, real, raw innocence and
Mm,
purity. Because having gone through life and so many experiences, it's a little difficult to erase all of that. It's a little difficult to unlearn everything that we've collected over the years. But that's what I needed to do, to try and become the character. And that's what I struggled with the most, to be honest. And I was helped from the strangest of quarters, from where I least expected it. And that's an interesting story. So I'll tell you what happened. My son Junaid
mm,
had gone to American Academy of Dramatic Arts to learn theater, And then he stayed back a year to work for the company and do plays for them. And he was back in India after 3 years. And that was the same time that we had begun work on the film. And Advait, who was someone who was very keen to, had thrown his hat in to be the director of the film. And I also had a lot of hopes in him. I thought he was really good. He had made a great film in Secret Superstar. But I said, it's a very difficult film, Advait, and I'm not sure you can handle it. So what I'd like you to do is I'm going to pick 6 or 7 of the key scenes of the film, and I want you to shoot them. And I want to see it as a test. It's like a test for you. If you can handle these scenes, then you can handle the film. So he was in that process, and I had selected the scenes, and that's when Junaid was back from the US. And I said, you know what, why don't you take Junaid and shoot this test? Because you need to do it without me. I mean, I need to test you, so it should be with some neutral actor. And in the process, you'll also see what he's learned. And so he said, okay. And then 2 weeks later, they showed me the screen test. Now, when I saw the screen test, both Kiran and I loved Advait's work. So that became clear to us very quickly that he's really proved himself as the right guy to direct it. But what really shocked us and what we didn't expect was that Junaid, who's acting for the first time, I mean, his performance was so charming. He was Laal Singh. And he's young, so that innocence of the youth, and even when he's an older Sikh, because the scenes were all across different ages, and even as an older Sikh, Junaid was so charming because his innocence was so pure, and he didn't have to act it. You know, it was almost as if we were watching Laal Singh. So it became a little difficult for me to see myself in the role after that. And the process of finally deciding whether I should do it or he should do it, because I'd been dying to do this film for the last 8 years. But when I saw his work and I showed it to friends, colleagues, and all of us felt that, you know, you found Laal, that's your Laal. And while we know you'll do it well, but we think this is him, so you should take him in the film. So we almost decided that, but then Atul, who's the writer of the film, and Adi Chopra, who's a friend, were insistent from the start that no, you're making a mistake. And their point was that Laal Singh Chaddha, like Forrest Gump, is a very episodic film. The nature of the form of it is fairly episodic. And you don't want to cast a new actor in that role. You need a star to kind of hold it and bind it together. So that made sense to me. So I said, okay. So he went with me finally in the casting. But that actually, the whole screen test that I saw of 21 minutes, that gave me the key, which I had to tune into to play the part. Because, that's what I was saying, I got from the strangest quarters. I had never expected a new actor to actually give me the key, what I should be catching for the part. And when we were shooting the film, I would often go back to those 6, 7 scenes and watch how he had done it, because his take on things was so unusual that really helped me, you know, get a grip on the character.
Wow, that's amazing. So, and like after you worked with her on Three Idiots and Talash, and you have a very like a very special like chemistry with Kareena Kapoor on screen and then off screen, like your friends obviously. And it's like, so like, how's that just been like developing this chemistry? Because last time you worked together was almost like 10 years ago, and now you're back together, and it's like, because you need a special person for this Rupa role.
She's really amazing, and working with her is it's like a dream. You know, she's so wonderful as a person, as a human being. She's so she's just, you know, she's such a huge star, but she's really like a regular person, and she's so amazing as an actor. She kind of just melts into the part, and she becomes Rupa when you're doing the shot, and it's really magical to work with her. Yeah.
Awesome. And then you have a very special like cameo in the movie with Shah Rukh Khan shows up. I mean, everyone. I was expecting both of you guys to be on screen for the first time, but like, so how did that kind of sequence come together? Where you're like, because Forrest Gump also does the same thing, where it like pokes, you know, recorrects history, and so how did that sequence come together?
Well, we needed to find an Elvis, because that's what they had used in the original. So I think we found the perfect Elvis in Shah Rukh. Who better than Shah Rukh to be the Elvis of India?
Yeah.
and we needed one of the biggest stars, and I think he was just right, and it was really sporting of him to do that. It was also great of Naga Chaitanya to do the part of Baba, and Nag
Mm.
is a very popular actor in the Telugu industry, and it was wonderful working with him. He's such a great actor and such a wonderful person. Mona was so wonderful to work with.
Yeah.
She plays Lal's mother, and she was amazing to work with. So we had a great team, and Advait was in his element. I think today, when all of us look at the film, we feel very happy that Advait as a director has managed to bring it very close to what we had imagined it would be, and we're really all happy about that, and we're hoping people like it.
Yeah, yeah, me too. And like, I grew up in the U.S., so it's like I've always been curious because you and Shah Rukh Khan are like the biggest stars in the world to me, and
Mm.
so like, which makes your like friendship kind of fascinating. So like, I know you guys have never starred together, but have you ever had like discussions like, hey, let's, or is it like dependent on the project? Like, do you need something like huge on the scale of like we just saw
Mm.
RRR a couple months ago, and it's like, do you need something like that, or is it something like you need the project to make it worthwhile, or is it just
Yes, no,
something
but
that?
I think Shah Rukh and I over the years have come really close, and we share a very warm relationship, and there's a lot of love and regard in our hearts for each other. And I think that when the right story comes about, I think we definitely would love to work together. Yeah.
Awesome. And then like I've always thought you always been a little bit ahead of the curve when you're making your movies because you started your production company in the 90s and then made Lagan, which is amazing. And so like as you move into your like as you get closer to 60 and you've taken significant breaks throughout your career. It's like what kind of movies are you excited to make moving forward like after Laal Singh Chaddha and like what comes next for Aamir Khan?
Well, uh, I when I'm doing something, I'm just looking at what I'm doing. So right now it's just Laal Singh, and then
Mm,
we'll see what comes next. Mm.
awesome. And like you're working with you have this very like interesting storyline with the Lieutenant Dan character, Lieutenant Mohammed in this movie,
Ah,
is
yeah, yeah,
very
yeah.
different in this, and so like, and it's it's a tricky like you had to balance a lot of things and make him likable ultimately. So like, can you tell me about like just developing that character and just developing that storyline? Because I think the message of the movie is beautiful. It's like
Mm,
goodness
mm.
overcomes sort of everything. So like, can you tell me about that?
Well, this is actually all Atul's work that you're talking about. So when we heard the adaptation for the first time, all of these things were already in place. The character of Mohammed. So his adaptation from Lieutenant Dan was Mohammed, and I thought that was a amazing, a very very creatively a bold move to make. As a creative person, because he's
Mm.
actually playing with one of the lead characters of the film, and you're kind of twisting it around in a very unusual way. But Atul, in his first film as a writer, has shown some bold moves, and I think they kind of worked for me, and so we went with all of that. But so all of this is Atul's work, really.
Awesome. And so like you've done a lot of sports movies, but I also read that you played tennis growing up. Like I also played tennis growing up. So like
Oh,
would you ever be interested in doing a sports movie again where you're playing tennis this time? Because that's not something we see like Indian people play on screen.
yeah. Well, I like doing sports films. They're really tough to do. Sports films are
Hmm.
tough to do. And I think I've done Lagan, and what
Dango.
else? Dangal was on
Hmm.
wrestling. Yeah, I've done a couple. Um, so if it comes up, if I come across a good sports film, then yeah, I would love to do it. Yeah. Mm.
Awesome. And then like just as like an aspiring filmmaker, I just want to ask like because you are like an icon. Like this is the greatest like interview of my lifetime right now. And so I just want to be like what kind of advice do you give? Like I grew up 8,000 miles away from where you are, but I just
Mhm.
watched your films. I watched Shah Rukh Khan, Salman Khan. And so like what kind of advice do you give like young aspiring Indian American Indian like all over the world kind of filmmakers?
Well, I don't know what advice. I'm not sure that you guys need my advice, but I can tell you what I've learned, and
Mm,
see if it makes sense to you. Well, I've learned to follow my dreams, and whenever I've wanted to do something which really excites me, invariably, uh, people who are close to me, who love me, who are protective of me, have always told me, no, no, don't do this. This is not right. You should, So a lot of people have told me, don't do what I wanted to do, but I always did what I wanted to do. And I think that's what I would say, that worked for me. I mean, I want to make my own mistakes. So like when
Mhm.
I was making Lagan, everyone said, don't make it. It's a big mistake. It's a period film. It won't work. It's a sports film. Indians don't like sports films. And you're talking in Avdhi, and here people want to wear DKNY, and you're going to wear dhotis and all that.
Mhm.
So many logics were thrown at us for not making the film. But I just loved it. So I
Mhm.
wanted to make it. Similarly for Tare Zameen Par, it's such an unusual film, but I just loved it. So what I've learned is that you should follow your heart, and sometimes you need to compromise to achieve your dream, but don't compromise with the dream itself. So there's a difference between that,
Mhm.
and sometimes to achieve what you want to achieve, you have to compromise a little bit, and it's okay to do that, as long as you don't compromise with the dream itself. You know, and so follow your dream, and work towards it, and that's what I've learned. Yeah, I guess.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Amir. This has been an absolute honor. I'm a really huge fan, and it's been such a pleasure to talk to you. And if you're ever in America
Pleasure.
and you want some
Pleasure.
golgappas, my mom makes some great pani puri and all that
Oh,
stuff. So,
please give her
but you're
my
always
love.
welcome at our house.
Thank
But
you.
thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Take care. Bye bye.
You too.
Thanks, Rohan.